beautiful recitation. Brothers and sisters, the fight for Palestinian liberation does not end with a ceasefire. It only begins. It only begins. The fight for Palestinian liberation does not end with a ceasefire. In fact, the ceasefire is very fragile at the moment. This is only the beginning of what we need to do. The occupation is not over. The occupation continues. It's tightening every day. The lives of Palestinians, particularly in Gaza, is broken. They have nothing to go back to, but their spirit is alive. Their spirit is unbroken. And our resistance at this point must be stronger than ever against the occupation and the ongoing genocide. The genocide has not ended. In fact, the effects of the genocide will be felt for generations to come, since we know what malnutrition does to young people. There are many forms of resistance. Just being here in solidarity with our sister and to hear of her experiences is a form of resistance. Writing and speaking, whether it's on social media or elsewhere, is a form of resistance. Armed struggle is a form of resistance, and we know it's the highest form of resistance. And that's what our brothers and sisters are involved in Palestine at this point in time. Breaking the siege is an act of resistance. And the Sumud Flotilla was also a high act of resistance. The flotilla achieved what many governments were unable to achieve. The flotilla achieved what the treachery of many of the regimes around Palestine were unable to do. And instead of protecting the flotilla, they actually worked against it. In fact, the warships that accompanied the flotilla, and Fatima will tell us about it, were supposed to protect them, but actually abandoned them. So when Fatima contacted me a few weeks before she embarked on her journey to join the flotilla, I wasn't surprised that she was joining the flotilla, since we know what her upbringing was. Fatima was born and brought up in Durban. I'm not sure if she was born in Durban, maybe Uitenhage. But she spent a large part of her youth in Durban. In fact, we were neighbors in Reservoir Hills. And her father was the director of the Muslim youth movement, was actively involved in the struggle for liberation in this country. And he was involved in Uitenhage as well as in Durban. And of course, thereafter, they moved to Cape Town. And I knew that she would take up this challenge because she grew up in an environment where her family stood up for justice and spoke truth to power. And this is what it's all about, speaking truth to power. Her family, particularly her mother and her father, who are very beloved to us, made tremendous sacrifices for the community. They left their family in Cape Town and Uitenhage and moved to Durban to spearhead the Muslim youth movement, which was very active at that time in a community, not only in Islamic work, but also in the struggle against apartheid. Fatima herself is a survivor of cancer as well as Guillain-Barré syndrome. And she's the author of numerous books. We, in fact, had a book launch here a few months ago. She has now become an icon in the Palestinian liberation struggle, and she's a role model for her youth. It is indeed an honor and privilege for me to call upon Dr. Fatima Hendricks to tell us about her experiences and where do we go from here in furthering the resistance against the occupation in Palestine. Welcome, Fatima, to Durban.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فصلي يا ربي وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد واغفر لنا يا خير الغافرين Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin al-Nuri wa alihi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and greetings of peace, salutations of peace and blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Honorable parents, grandparents, our elders, our leadership and comrades from the South African Palestine movement, from Healthcare Workers for Palestine, from the Islamic Forum, and all Palestine solidarity organizations, interfaith organizations, community organizations, grassroots organizations, our brothers, sisters, our youth. I am indeed so honored to be here back home in Durban. Thank you so much for your warmth in receiving me today, and for all the prayers and the well wishes that I've received over the weeks that I was on the flotilla and since being back. It has been so heartfelt to know that I had left from a community and I've returned to a community. So thank you so, so much for this. I'm so grateful to Almighty God, the All-Loving, for the opportunity to be a servant on the flotilla, to be one that was given the opportunity to be a servant, to serve on the flotilla in our effort to break the siege, the illegal and immoral siege of Gaza. I am so grateful for this opportunity right now to dispense of a great responsibility, an amana, to come home and bear witness and provide testimony of what the glimpses I received of what the Palestinian people have been going through for decades. I thank you for this opportunity so that we can make voice together, so together we can recommit ourselves to taking the Palestinian struggle seriously, individually and collectively, with more fervor than we have before, and understanding our own situatedness and positionality in this country as we face Zionism head on. Because this struggle for liberation of South Africa and Palestine are so entangled and intertwined in our history in our historical struggle for liberation, that we need to remind ourselves that our current reality is not post-apartheid. Our current reality is post-1994. And the threats that we faced in the apartheid era are very much alive and well in our current situation. And tonight is an opportunity for us to be engaged in community conversation with each other, so that we can remind each other of these realities, remove some of the blinkers that we might have on, and really talk frankly and openly about the challenges that we face. So everyone is very curious about the Global Sumud Flotilla, how I got on, when we got on, all the logistics, where did I go to the toilet, what did I eat, who was on the boat, how long did we sail for, how did I throw up, were my legs wobbly, how did I sleep, how many drones there were, how many boats there were, how long did we stop, shall I go on? So all that is interesting, but it's not the point. The point is that there has been an illegal and immoral siege of Gaza for decades, by land, by sea, and by air. A few months before the Global Sumud Flotilla was put together, comrades went on the global march to Gaza. And I know, Lubna, were you there? Who else was on the global march to Gaza, to Egypt? Anyone else besides me? Yes? Oh, great. What's your name? Omar, well done. So that in that effort, we could see the complicity of the neighboring state, not only in its complicity, but its active prevention of blocking people from around the world that were trying to get to Rafah, to cross Rafah, to break the siege by land. And built on this experience of betrayal, coalitions from around the world got together and formed what is called the Global Sumud Flotilla. The global march to Gaza became the global movement to Gaza, accompanied with the Freedom Flotilla that has been going to Gaza, trying to break the siege since 2005. And we met a lot of those comrades in Tunisia, as well as formations from Europe, from Asia, and from North America. And so we found ourselves in Tunisia for the training, right? The criteria were that we had to commit to direct nonviolent action. And when we talk about nonviolent action, it often is that it's something passive, it's for people who are weak, and it doesn't yield any results. But I tell you, direct nonviolent action is one of the most powerful tools and strategies we as civilians have. And time in our history, from the 1956 Women's March to where we are today, it has power and effect. So in our training, we were sitting in a room like this. I'll give you an example. We were sitting in the room in the trade union buildings of Tunisia. In the ground floor, comrades were there from over 46 countries. We were just come back from break, and the chairs were arranged facing each other. It looked like it was a formation of a boat, but we didn't think much about it. In the background, we could hear kind of talking, some sound effects in the background. We could hear what sounded like drones and some walkie-talkies, but nobody was really paying that much attention. We'd just come back from tea. And we were very animated to talk to our comrades from all over the world. So everyone took their seats. Suddenly, the lights went off, the doors barged open, and a mob of people came in and started beating us with pool noodles. Right? We didn't know there were pool noodles. The lights were dark. The drones were going. There was firing in the background. We were shoved to the floor. We were given instructions to do all sorts of things. Move here, do that, get on the floor, lie on the floor, stand up, all these things. And this was the example of the training that we had to go through. Just one snippet of learning what it was like to be on the Mavi Marmara, to get a little glimpse of being on the Mavi Marmara in 2010 when 9 activists were killed by Israel, by the occupation forces as they tried to sail towards Gaza to break the illegal siege. And we had a member of the Mavi Marmara on our boat, Dr. Makri from Algeria, who told us many harrowing stories of what actually transpired. But the reason I tell you is because in this direct nonviolent action, they were teaching us that when confronted with a violent aggressor, this is not the appropriate time of self-defense with violence, because we will be annihilated. Civilians will not stand against a mighty army. And so our act of resistance was to be present, and that alone was an act of power, of resistance, and to push forward towards Gaza no matter what came our way. And so from there we got onto boats. I was assigned to get onto the Amsterdam boat. I was with another comrade from South Africa. She was later deployed to another boat. I was with a comrade from Ireland, Donna, another comrade from Algeria, a 71-year-old woman from Algeria, member of parliament. Our oldest boat crew member was 78. Our youngest was 18. That was the commitment. We were united under every conceivable difference. Every difference that you could think of that anyone could be stratified by, we were there. But yet we were united to say that this genocide is wrong and that we needed to sail to Gaza so that children, men, women could get food and that the siege must end. The night of, I'm going to fast forward. We can, in the Q&A, maybe fill in some of the details. We were on night watch, drones followed us. We were attacked twice in Tunisia with bombs. We were attacked 14 times with bombs in Greece. Incendiary devices, flashbangs, chemicals, unidentified substances. Okay. When we got to the night of interception, the night before that, the IOF did a trial run, right? They basically sent some of their naval ships to harass and jam the signals of the 2 lead boats. And I think they were trying to figure out who were the lead boats and how the lead boats' agility was in response. And then the next night, we were told by Tiago and the steering committee that the blockade was up ahead and we were sailing towards it. As each boat fell, one boat fell, and another boat fell, and another boat fell. We had 6 leader boats, and they fell one after the other. Attacked, intercepted, and boarded by the IOF. The rest of the flotilla was literally left with the instruction, sail and sail on. And our boat sailed as fast and as hard as we could. We were a motorboat. We were harassed on that ocean for about 10 hours by the Israeli forces. They encircled us. They went to another boat. They came back. They went onto another boat. They did all these demands, of different things. I'm so sorry. I should really put that off. Thank you. So we were under attack for 10 hours in different forms, from maneuvers across the ocean, from being encircled, from water cannons, 4 attacks of water cannons on our boats, such that our boats were vibrating. Water was coming through. It was going to crack the glass of the boat. Eventually, we had yielded at about between 4 to 4:30 a.m. after it started at 8 p.m. We were exhausted by then. Our signals of communication were jammed, so I was trying to get messages out, taking videos, trying to send them, trying to communicate with other boats, looking out to see which boats were still in action, where we were. And at one point, we were all alone. We had sailed so far. We were the furthest boat at 40 nautical miles at that point. And then we saw some menacing boats coming in front of us, and we turned around. And as we turned around, we headed straight into the Israeli forces, who then told us that we were breaking naval law, that we were in illegal waters, that we were being intercepted, and that we were going to be boarded. At that point, we responded to say that we were humanitarian workers in international waters and that they should stand down. Subsequently, they boarded. They took us by arm, covered to the front of the boat. We held onto the railings. We had our life jackets, and then they took us one by one for searches and removed our passports. By then, our phones we had already thrown overboard, because if they get our phones, they know that I'm talking to Lubna and Auntie Arshad and Uncle Ahmed and Seydunisa. And if they have 500 phones, they build out a network of 500 networks and connect the dots. And so it was protocol to make sure that we threw the phones overboard. Now we get to Ashdod. We're the second boat into the port. The first boat is Rima Hassan's boat, Captain Nicolas, who's a French MP. They were waiting, applauded us as we came in. They were on a sailboat. The second boat was us, Amsterdam. The third was the Mali boat, both Maghrib boats. We got up. The entire port was filled with Israeli ministers, press, and soldiers. The entire port was full of soldiers. We had, I was helped up onto the port and then immediately taken by 2 soldiers who then marched me into the port. We were denied legal services, consular representation. My hijab was stripped. I was accused of being a terrorist. They cut my shoes open. Then they cut my other pair of shoes open. Then they, in my 2 strip searches, discovered that I have had breast cancer and told all the male guards that I do not have breasts, and it was to their pleasure and great delight. And so their attempts at humiliation were deliberate and part of the broader types of humiliation and sickness that we've seen displayed by the Israelis. Do you remember the soldiers, IOF soldiers, with the women's lingerie? Like wearing dead women's lingerie, putting women's lingerie onto tankers, and Israel claiming that they have the world's sexiest soldiers. And we saw these soldiers with Botox and makeup, boobs, tight pants, tight t-shirts, playing the part of Israel's sexiest soldiers. And this is the sickness of this kind of almost semi-pornographic imaginary that they have. Let alone the sexual abuse that they have inflicted on healthcare personnel, like Dr. Bush, who died of sexual assault, right? And others who have been raped, a pregnant woman raped in the hospital in front of her male family members. I mean, and pregnant. Right? So this is the vileness that we have seen. Getting into being thrown then into the truck, the prison truck, they don't take you, they throw you into the prison truck and then throw you into the cage like where you are in the prison truck and then throw your shoes in your face. That's basically the modus of operandi. And when they found out I was South African, they said, "Welcome to paradise," because they knew. Then we were off into the prison. We were off into Guantanamo Bay. We literally drove hours to get to the desert, the Negev desert, to Kitsin prison. And that's where all of the male prisoners had been held. And we were held up to that point. We had not had any water, no food, no toilets, right? When we arrived, we were then eventually taken to see doctors. Every person was taken to see a doctor, given prison clothes. I then took the t-shirt and wrapped it on my head for my hijab and was able to go to a toilet and then taken. I was the first of 5 women taken to the prison cell. When I got there, all that was on the courtyard was an Israeli flag. And above that, the next morning, was a massive banner that says, Gaza al-Jadida, the new Gaza. And the picture that was on that wall was what? A destroyed Gaza, buildings demolished, with just people, poor, like displaced people walking. And that is the new Gaza. They played 24/7 the October 7 videos in the quad, in that courtyard, over and over all night. They came every hour, hour and a half with torches and to count us. We had, we were denied medical access until we started aggressively demanding it. I was only given medical care after the lawyer at my court hearing heard the story and wrote to them for access for medical care for me. There were people in our cell that were diabetics, had issues with cholesterol, hypertension, antidepressants, needed antidepressants, anxiolytics, ADHD medication, everything was denied. So it was really, really tough, right? When we demanded for healthcare, they came with sprays. These are not maces. They came with gas and into the cell, had them and said, we will spray you for this if you don't stop asking, and if you don't stop demanding for your medical care. The first time I saw a lawyer was at my court hearing. She was an Adala lawyer, she was defending me in real time. This was days, I got in front of the judge, I asked, who are you? And he refused to tell me his name. He said, you will get my name on the decision letter. I said, I demand to know which judge I'm appearing in front of. He said, you will get to know the name when I give you your decision letter. And we had other battles to fight at that point. So that is the most moral army in the world. That is the best democracy, the only democracy in the Middle East. When we were trying to get mattresses, you've heard the story, we were trying to get mattresses. We were sitting, sharing food that we eventually got. I shared a cell with Greta Thunberg. I shared a cell with an MP from France. I shared a cell with the captain of one of our boats who works in the Mediterranean, who saves people who are drowning in the Mediterranean, migrants trying to get to Europe. The caliber of people has been absolutely remarkable. Greta was removed every couple of hours to kneel in front of Ben Gvir as he spoke down to her, to be taken to meetings with these psychopathic ministers from Israel who told her that she was deluded and really abused her verbally. She was taken to sit next to the Israeli flag and kiss it for hours and hours in a corner. I mean, the kind of abuses has been absolutely horrific. When we were trying to get mattresses, we literally were sitting, the door flung open, said, you need to move right now. We said, can we take our mattresses with us? Because we'd fought to get the mattresses. No, you don't need it. We went to the end of the corridor, got there were only metal beds. And we were like, how is this? I remember it's overcrowding. It's a small cell. We like 14 people, 10 to 14 people, and the numbers kept changing of people in the cell. We need our mattresses. We got there. No mattresses. 2 comrades went down to fetch the mattresses. They brought it back. I put it in the room. Another set the same set went down. A fight ensued where the soldiers stopped us from getting the mattresses. And they pushed our comrade to the floor. Another comrade who was an acupuncturist that had been so wonderful wrapped her to all of us in the cell. She got on the floor, she wrapped herself in protection like this around the other comrade because she was surrounded by soldiers. We were arguing and trying to pull the 2 comrades into the cell. One of the soldiers pulled Reyes by her hair on the floor. Okay, and this was escalating from 0 to 1,000 in a few seconds. Eventually, we were able to get everybody back into cell, slam the door, and we were trying to just de-escalate and gather our thoughts. As I stood at the door, I saw through the corner of my eye them getting ready with riot gear. And I told everyone, they're coming in heavy and they're coming in fast. And they stormed us. It must have been between 20 and 30 soldiers with dogs. We were pushed against the wall onto our knees with rifles, snipers facing us in our faces as unarmed women because we wanted mattresses. And then they took our two comrades off to solitary. And Reyes was just released a few days ago. She's Spanish. She was charged. She, in self-defense, either bit or put her nails into one of the soldiers. She was charged $3,000. And she spent about 8 or 9 days in detention because of self-defense. And she had to plead guilty. And so this is what we see repeatedly. Now imagine what the Palestinians go through. I'm bearing this testimony. These are only glimpses so that we can all understand the nature of this incredible violence that the Palestinians are experiencing, if this is only a slither of what we experienced as international civilians who knew they were going to be released, who knew that their consular was coming for them, who knew that they were going to get legal attention, legal help, who knew that the world's eyes were on the flotilla. And then there was a courtyard, and there was a blood-spattered wall. And I remember going up to that wall, and it looked like a fingerprint, like a handprint, and I wasn't sure. And on the one day that I got out, because we didn't really get out for sunshine, for anything. We were in our cells all the time unless somebody called for us. So I put my hand on this handprint, and I remember praying for the martyr and the many, many martyrs that had come through that prison. We had a holding space session in our cell, where we actually spent several hours reading the wall of the testimony of the Palestinians who had been there, reading their stories. They were in Jabalia, they were in Nasser, they were taken from this date to this date to this date. And all of them said, we're not sure, we've been here so long, but we're not sure why we're being moved. And that was in September. And they were being moved because they were being prepared for our arrival, right? And what was so strange was everything was dilapidated. Everything was, all the toilets, oh wow, okay, right, imaginations go wild. The rusty doors, the smells, the only thing that was new were the epoxy coated floors. So it makes you wonder what made them put in new epoxy-coated floors. What testimony lay on those floors? There were bullets in our ceiling. There were bullets on the walls of the prison. Because remember, it's like a courtyard, and it's covered with like barbed wire. It's got guards on the top in elevated that have rifles that can shoot down on the quad. Then you had all the cells down here, and then this massive area with cages where all this personnel stood, the soldiers. And such was that nature. So thank you so much for allowing me this testimony. Okay, we were then taken onto the prison truck, taken to, released eventually, got 10 minutes with our consular services, 10 minutes, 10 for 6 of us, 10 minutes. Every other consular had like hours, we got 10 minutes. And so we are incredibly grateful to the ambassadors of Syria, the ambassador of Qatar, the South African ambassador to Qatar, the South African ambassador to Syria, the South African ambassador to Palestine, the South African ambassador to Jordan, to Durban, for their mobilizing to get us out. But we had 10 minutes. And then we were taken on the trucks, prison trucks, in the wee hours of the morning, to the Jordan border, Israel-Jordan border, where the Jordanian ambassador was waiting for us on the Allen Bridge, transferred to Jordan, where our ambassadors were waiting, and from there we were transferred to Qatar, where the Qatar ambassador, South African ambassador to Qatar, met us. And then from there we flew to Johannesburg, where Interpol was waiting for us to verify by Israel that we had arrived. We have arrived, Israel. We've arrived, and we will be back. So that is the nature of where we are right now. So there's been lots of haspara that there was no aid. I can testify. I'm one of the counters of the aid. So bring it on. Bring it on, right? I was a counter of aid on 2 boats. Not 1, but 2. The South African boat Amsterdam, the South African boat Florida, that South African donors bought for like 120 to 130,000 euros, that belongs to South Africa donors. I counted that aid, right? That was aid that I counted with Zukiswa. If it was a 450-gram can and you multiplied it by, you had 100 cans or 500 cans, whatever it was, you calculated the grammage and you sent that figure off, right? We took pictures and videos of the aid on each of our boats, and we had to submit that. I did exactly the same thing with my boat Amsterdam, with Donna, taking pictures as well as counting the aid. And remember, we are small boats. We have sailboats and we have motorboats. How much aid can we carry? The point overall was to open up a sustainable sea corridor of aid so that we could get boats to Gaza, right? And that has been it from 2005. 5 boats in that time reached Gaza, 5 boats. So our boats were stolen, our aids were stolen, some boats were sunken, and that is where we are. And so we will continue to challenge Israel and the occupiers and the Zionist agenda locally through every means that we have at our disposal and internationally as we prepare future flotillas and land movements to Gaza. I thank you all for the opportunity to testify before each of you. We have a saying in Arabic, which I stand firm by, La shukran ala wajib. There is no thanks for that which is obligatory. None of us are heroes, none of us want awards. It's out of the generosity of people's goodness that people are kind to us. But this has been a communal responsibility, a fard kifaya for us to dispense on behalf of the South African people, that we were, by God's facilitation, not our own choice of anything we did, to be there and to be representative. There are Palestinian solidarity organizers that have been on the struggle, doing this their whole lives. People committed intergenerationally that are in this room, right? And it was by God's will that we were the ones that were there. This does not deter or should not be seen as some kind of incredible effort. We were servants and we remain humble servants. We are open to correction and we want to go back. And we want to commit ourselves and continue to recommit ourselves to a South African struggle that is rooted in liberation and liberation with the Palestinian people, in standing in loving solidarity with our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Amandla! 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 It is this people's power that has caused the ceasefire. It is the Palestinians broadcasting their own killing that has forced the ceasefire. It is the Palestinians' existence by their mere breathing that has caused this ceasefire. This ceasefire is not a peace plan. This ceasefire are legal obligations to end the genocide of who they funded, of a genocide they funded, they caused, they enabled, and they continue to do. This is a legal obligation to let food in. It is a legal obligation to let aid in. This is not a peace plan. There is no mention of liberation, no journey towards liberation, no appetite for the ending of occupation, but rather an entrenchment of occupation by expanding occupation into Gaza. And that is the reality. Who is administering Gaza? Tony Blair and Trump, a war criminal and a convicted felon who has done a deal with another war criminal. And that is the status of the so-called peace plan. And we have the buffoons of our Muslim betrayals that will stand next to Trump in front of the peace plan and do thumbs up. Well done. Well, we say to you that we are witnesses that the governments have failed, and it is up to the people and one collective human effort that will resist the occupation and that will continue forever to stand with oppressed people around the world and to fight for the liberation of South Africa against Zionism and the expansion of a greater Israel and against their occupation in Palestine. Amandla!
Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine. Thank you, Fatima, for that very riveting account. And thank you for representing us from South Africa. We truly appreciate what you've done. And may Allah bless you. As I've mentioned, that the ceasefire is not an end to occupation. In fact, it is entrenching the occupation.